Real excited to be able to introduce our keynote speaker tonight. One of the things that we're asking you to do here at AgEmerge is to see new information, okay? And we had a chance to work with Holly Green today just on how we see and process information. And some of the exercises that she did and some of the things that she taught us is just amazing. We really only see 10% of what's around us, okay? So if we want to see something new, we have to learn how to look for new things, don't we? So it's really exciting to be able to have Holly here. I asked her, how would you like me to introduce you? She says, well, just tell them how wonderful of a person I am, how smart, intellectual, and just overall how great of a person I am. So is that good enough there, Holly, on that? So no, Holly is amazing. We got to work with her about a year ago through a Vistage group, which is a small business peer-to-peer advisory group. We really enjoyed her, and we asked her to come out and teach us, and also to speak to you and learn how your mind works, how the mind connects, so that you can see and interpret and put new information to work. She has multiple degrees in behavioral sciences and neurophysiology, so she really knows her stuff from a research perspective, not from I wrote a book and I'm wonderful perspective, okay? So it's real world application, which is what we really, really like and enjoy. So Holly, I'm excited to invite you up here to the screen and challenge our thunking. And when we're all done, we're going to thunk better thunks, right? All right, Holly Green, please welcome her.
All right, so we just took a quick look inside some of your brains. You saw there was a lot of stuff in there, right? For some of you, maybe not so much. Okay. So we are going to play, I am going to play with your brain tonight. Did you bring yours? Anybody not bring theirs? I have a few extras, so mine are not to scale, but if you do end up needing one, we do have some up here, so don't worry. Don't worry. As Monty said, I'm pretty serious about behavioral science. I do have a BA and BS. I think that's really why he thought I would be a perfect fit for this group tonight. Yeah? Mine's behavioral science, whatever you were thinking. Okay. I do have a master's of science degree in organization development. My postgraduate work is neurophysiology. How and why do you think and behave the way that you do at work? And how and why do those other strange people you have to work with think and behave the way they do? And that's my very small sandbox in the neurosciences today. So let me just do my first legal disclaimer for you, and really the only one I'll have for you this evening. Every single thing I tell you is subject to change tomorrow, okay? We're in the infancy of understanding the adult human brain. It is the organ in the human body we know the least about today. Think about it for just a minute. How could we know? We have some high format functional magnetic resonance imaging, so with electrodes I can watch you thunk, I can see some synapses, but how do I really know what's going on in there? I don't have a lot of robots yet that go in there and tell me. I don't know about you guys, I'm still disappointed we're not Jetson level, right? So it's an interesting thing. However, we do know it is an amazing and wondrous tool. The way that your brain works, in fact, is what sets you apart from the animal kingdom most days, okay? It is a fascinating thing. So just logistically, let me mention you have some materials there in front of you. You do have my full bio on the inside cover. You're probably going to want to read and memorize that for later. However, what's most important for our next 3.5 hours together, okay, not really, 42 minutes and 46 seconds apparently, and then I'm going to get turned off. It's kind of like the Golden Globes, right? But I'm not going to stand up here and criticize liberals like Ricky Gervais apparently did, so don't worry. It would be okay? Is that what someone said? Because I can totally do that. I can totally go there with you. All right. So we're not going to do that. We are going to play with your brain just a little bit. We're going to do some brain exercises. I'll point you to the materials as you go. Those are also a reference for you for later when you want to think back and refresh your brain just a little bit. Because the likelihood of you learning while you're sitting in that seat tonight is very low. It is only when we do something different that we create the new neural pathways in our brain. Okay? So we love happy button seat. That's what we call it when you're happy, okay, during the presentation. But most importantly, it is behavioral change that will make a difference. Make sense? All right. So let's take a little journey. Dr. Seuss happens to be one of my very, very favorite authors in the world. He talks about the wondrous and amazing brain, the imagination, the imagineering that he was able to do, whole new languages, both for children and adults, teaching us to ponder a few new thunks. So let's play around a little bit with that. As creatures, we naturally share different views, but we want to be accurate and prove that we're true. We all want to be precise and concise and use big jumbo words that make us look nice. But how can we prove that we're truer than true when the meaning for me might be different for you? I get in a slump when the things that I thunk makes your nose run and your feet smell like skunk. I don't understand why hammers don't ham. Why one goose is two geese, but two moose ain't two meese. What's up with that? Why does your traffic turn into jam? Your fingers don't thing, but writers can write. I'm confused, can't you see? Preachers can't prot, but teachers do taught. Our sweetbreads aren't sweet, and instead they're full of meat. You ship on a truck instead of the sea. Our communication is strange, in no way simple, you see. Words and meaning for you might be different for me, but we're so sure we're right. We continue along, assuming you know, but me thinking, you're wrong. I love Dr. Seuss as an author. Absolutely love him. And there are so many wonderful books that he wrote. One of my favorite, Oh, the Things You Can Think. How many of you have read it? It is a most astounding gift for children and grandchildren, by the way. An absolutely joyful journey into using this 3 pounds that we carry around with us everywhere we go, or almost. Yeah? And he has so many wonderful imaginings and poems and things that, if you really look at them, prompt you to consider possibilities, options, and alternatives. Right? So we have the ability to have unfettered thinking, to imagine possibilities, to explore whole new frontiers. Sounds like I'm doing a whole Star Trek entry, right? And yet, most days we really don't. This brain that we carry around with us is astounding. It helps us be capable of so many things. We can learn languages, solve complex problems, recognize faces. And yet, many days, see, he said he agreed. Many days, it's not serving us particularly well. We're making assumptions. We have biases. We have blind spots. We get stuck in our ways of working. We thunk the same thunks over and over again because that's the way we're constructed to work as animals or creatures. It probably served us incredibly well in caveman days. We walked outside our cave. There was a saber-toothed tiger. We didn't have to pause and ponder, do I pet the kitty? We knew, oh my goodness, it had killed 14 of my family members last week. Perhaps I should run or get a really big stick, right? When the world was relatively stable and not changing at the pace of today, it served us well to do the same things over and over again. Probably ensured our survival. When was the last time the world changed for you? Yesterday? Last week? How many of you are doing things the same way you were doing them 10 years ago? Anybody? 5 years? A year? Is there anybody in here that's holding on to the notion that if I just get through next week, it'll slow down? Sometimes we have to believe that for just a minute just to get through the day, right? It's astounding. It's astounding the pace we're operating at. And we are not creatures constructed to do that well. And yet our brain has not evolved significantly, hasn't changed much as best as we can tell in at least the last 100 years. So these blind spots, these biases, this outdated thinking, we're sure it's right. I mean, after all, we do have a piece of data. You know, one time I lived down the street from the woman twice removed from my third cousin. It happened to her. It was on the internet. You saw it on the www, right? Yeah. It's an astounding thing, a really interesting thing. So we tend to do the same things over and over again and expect different results. Anybody? No, not you. You're here. You're smart people. Have any of you heard of anyone that's done that? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it is the definition of insanity, and yet it is how we're wired. Our brain loves traveling those same pathways. The circuitry is set. The neural pathways are created. And the more we do the same thing over and over again, the thicker that wiring gets in our brain. And so I want you to think about for just a moment, think about an elite athlete, for instance. Let's just imagine Peyton Manning. Sure ain't Tom Brady, right? Okay, so you're my only fellow Patriot hater in the room, apparently. Oh, come on. How many of you were thrilled they're knocked out? Raise your hands. All right, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so do you think he has to think about exactly, I step back on my heel, on my right foot, I move my arm this way, I do this to release? Do you think he thinks through every one of those steps when he throws a ball? No, of course not. How many times do you think he's thrown a football? Millions, right? Our brain gets used to that and does particularly well because practice is what creates those pathways. So in many, many ways, it serves us well. When you drive a car, you ride a bicycle, you walk across a stage, you're not thinking about every single aspect of that, right? You've done it before. You know that it works. You presume and assume certain things will happen. Yes? I assume this stage is not going to open up and swallow me, right? The risers aren't going to fall. And I knew I shouldn't have said that because probably now they are, so I'm going to move over here. Right? So it's a really, really interesting thing. So I've come up with some acronyms about the brain to help you remember some of the key ways that we operate or that we work. And I did thunk these up myself, okay? So you might not have heard of them before, but I do have them in your materials for you. So let's look at a few of these tendencies we have. SWWWTS. We see what we want to see. You see, you filter information. Your eyes are set up to filter what you screen in and what you screen out. And as Monty said earlier, you're only screening in approximately 10% of the data available to you at any given waking moment. But you think you see accurately. Bless your little hearts. Somebody speaks U.S. Southern in here, right? So close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes for a moment. And with your eyes closed quietly inside your own head, I want you to define and describe for me all of the walls of this room. You've been in this room now for an hour or two. Define and describe all the walls, just quietly to yourself. And now I want you to open your eyes. How well did you do? Did everybody get these paintings that are all on the wall? Did you get those? Can you tell me how many exit signs there are in the room? Yeah? Where the switches are? The colors of the uplights? Everybody got all that, right? No, of course you didn't. And yet you've been in this room for several hours. The data was available to you, correct? Yep. But what most of you probably saw when you came in was the primo table you wanted to get, right? Or the food on the side. Probably maybe the dessert table first. Or maybe even the bar, right? Depending on your preferences. So it's an amazing thing what we screen out and what we screen in. And mostly that is dictated by what you want to see. It is dictated by the fact that you are better at proving yourself right. So you screen in data that colludes with that proves you right in fact. I told you she was out to get me. You saw in the meeting, she frowned at me, right? You know how he is, right? I'm not making this up. You were there, yeah? I have a piece of data. And that's what I screen in and screen out on, what I already believe to be so. I'm better at proving myself right than any other single thing I do as an adult human. Don't you think? Isn't it true? It's obvious we should. Shouldn't we? Have any of you ever used those phrases? Oh, come on, be honest. Who's used those phrases? Every one of you, raise your hands right now. We've been taping you all secretly. Of course we use those phrases. And when you use that to start a sentence, don't you think it's true? What's the correct answer? Of course it is. Of course, oh great boss of mine, most brilliant person in the universe. Is that a real question when you start a sentence with, isn't it obvious that we should? Those are pretend questions. And we're really, really good at pretend questions. In fact, now that you know this, you will crack up in the next meeting you ever go into, right? You'll be like, oh my God, he's proven himself right. He's proven himself right. She's proven herself right. Listen to that. Because we're incredible at it. It's how we're constructed to work as animals. Again, probably served us really, really well throughout history. The problem is everything just changed again. Everything changes constantly. Just because you did it that way for the last 10 years, you think that's going to work for the next 10? The likelihood is pretty low, right? 87% of the Fortune 500 since 1970 are gone today. You knew that, right? How many of you have heard of Sears? Who's heard of Sears? I have a whole table of kids that have never seen a Sears catalog. That is a tragedy. Right? Yeah, they could have been, right? They were poised. You could buy your house in the Sears catalog. Right? It's absolutely fascinating stuff, and yet bankrupt, in liquidation. 87%. Success is your greatest enemy to updating and changing your brain. Because you presume and assume you can keep doing the same things over and over and get even better results, or at least even the same results. And the likelihood of that being true is 2, slim and none. Slim takes a lot of vacation. Right? It's a really, really interesting thing. So let's look at the next one, because this really correlates pretty directly to that one. NNNICBT. No, it can't be true. You've presented me with contrasting data, something I didn't believe, something I don't think is very real. No, it can't be true. Remember, I lived down the street from that lady twice removed from my second cousin. I saw it on the internet. Can't possibly be true. And here's the interesting thing about your brain that we really don't like to pay much attention to. Your brain does not discern between anecdotal and real or factual data. Have you ever come across somebody who says, oh, one time I had this happen, I experienced this, so it must be true? You're like, dude, here's 42 pages of reports that say no. Is this sounding familiar to anybody? Yeah. But by golly, it doesn't take much for us to grab on and hold on to whatever colludes with what we already believe. Again, how we're constructed to work. So let's look at the next one. When this happens to you, what do you do? What else is possible? Is it possible? I know it would be crazy talk. But is it possible something has changed? Is it possible there's new technology, new ways of working, new chemicals, new applications? Is it possible? I know you're right because you're smart. But is it possible something has changed? Is it possible we have different data, new ways of looking at this? And here's really a very cool thing about your brain. As soon as you visit and ask your brain a question, it cannot not answer. Do you know that? So if I ask you a good question, even a bad question, your brain cannot not answer. Make them good. So we don't want to ask people, why didn't you get that done? Is that what you really want to know? No. When you have gotten it done, let's talk about how you did it really quickly to get us caught up. Very different prompt. Very different prompt to the brain. And you have the power to get inside people's head and to really shift what they're thinking, how they're thinking, and why they're thinking what they're thinking. You have enormous power if you use it. If you use it really well. So this is my all-time favorite acronym. It's a TLA, a 3-letter acronym. Right? Do you guys have those in your business? Yeah? Can some of you do entire paragraphs in TLAs? Yes, of course you can. Of course you can. This is my all-time favorite. In the void of information, we fill in the blanks. If we don't really know why you said that in a meeting, why you did that, why you made the decision, why that did or did not happen, we make stuff up. Or as I like to say, we make shit up a lot. But I have children in the room, so pretend you didn't hear that. Right? We make up a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Constantly. In fact, most of us have PhDs in MSU. We're amazing and astounding at it. And again, go back to what I said earlier. The brain does not discern between real and imagined data. One of the ways we see this play out is, how many of you have heard of self-talk? Who's heard of self-talk? The things you're saying to yourself. Yeah? I'm not good enough. They're probably going to figure out I don't really know what I'm talking about. I've never done this. I'm kind of nervous. Anybody ever say those kinds of things to yourself? Yeah? Your brain doesn't know that's not true. It doesn't discern between real and imagined data. Self-talk is insanely powerful. So one of the things I want you to really think about is always talk to yourself like you were talking to a trusted, loved, and respected friend. Would you ever say to a friend of yours that you really respected, nah, you're not good enough to do that? But would you say it to yourself? It's very powerful. The language we use internally and externally. Insanely powerful, because it dictates how our brain processes, how we think, and therefore what we do. Right? Very, very powerful. So slowing down enough to think about that becomes crucial. Imaginary data becomes real. Our brain doesn't know that it's not. And the really kind of sad part about this is 9 out of the 10 thoughts that you think are negative. They're why you can't, why it won't, why it doesn't. That's what they sound like to me usually. Does it sound like that to you too? Yeah. You said one time 400 years ago we couldn't. And once I've heard it, because it's data to my brain, I hold on to it. I hold on to it for dear life. How many of you have been taught to unlearn? To refresh your brain? To lose some of the things that got you here because they ain't going to get you to the next place? Now, don't apply this in school because school has its own set of rules, but as soon as you get out, okay? As soon as you get out, right? It's a whole different game that you're playing when you're in school. And then there's the TWWH. Oh, that won't work here. My granddaddy didn't do it that way. None of you have ever thunk that, right? Have you heard of people, like on movies and TV, that have? Yeah, that won't work here. I know it works everywhere else, but not here, because I'm specialer. Right? I'm unique just like everyone else. It's a really interesting notion. And as soon as you thunk it, what did I say earlier you're better at doing than anything else in the entire universe of all mankind? Proving yourself right. So as soon as you have a thunk, you immediately key into looking for pieces of data, anecdotal or otherwise, to prove that you're right. You're incredible and astounding at proving yourself right. I told you it wouldn't work. You see what I said? I'm not making this stuff up. We tried that once before, 5 years ago. You remember? Just like Blockbuster. They tried live streaming. They just tried it 3 years too early. We didn't have the bandwidth. So when Netflix went to them and said, we will sell ourselves to you for $53 million, and they said, you are silly, silly, silly people. We tried live streaming. It will not work. And oh, by the way, we just hired the former CEO of 7-Eleven. He's going to make the big box experience great for our customers. Now, how many of you follow market value of Netflix? Anybody? Today, it's still only worth $53 billion. I don't know about you, but I would have taken that return. But they were sure it won't work. We've tried it. It won't work. They just forgot to refresh when things in the world changed. And then you've got, this one is like almost a whole sentence in and of itself, right? ESTWTWID. We truly believe that because we're right, and we can prove it, of course, because we have some data, that everyone sees the world the way I do. I mean, it's obvious, don't you think? Isn't it true? No question about it. Now, you see this play out in the news every single day today. Right? Do you think people presenting their idea or view think they're wrong? And yet someone can argue with them vociferously, right? On the opposite side of that. Do you think either party thinks they're wrong? No, of course not. It's obvious. I've got data. I've got real data. So we're convinced that everyone sees things the way I do. Everyone processes the way I do. And it is one of the single greatest mistakes we make as a human, is to believe that you thunk the way I thunk, because it is so obvious. And not to explore that maybe your thinking is a little different. And it's not wrong and I'm not right, or vice versa. It could just be different. It could really just be different. And maybe by exploring that, we'd learn something from each other. That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Imagine if we stopped arguing and we started exploring just a little bit. Just a little bit. Don't you think? Well, I don't like what you're saying. I can prove to you. I've got data. I've got data. So this brain of ours has amazing capabilities and capacities, but we just don't visit it very often. How many of you have plenty of time in your day? Who has plenty of time? Everybody have plenty of time? If anybody's a boss of one of those people, go ahead and take a note, right? No. Of course not. We are stretched thin. We are trying to do too much with too little. Almost everyone. I mean, unless you work for the United States Postal Service, right? Okay? You're pretty busy. Very, very busy people. Smart people. Able, but convinced that you don't have enough time. My job, I think, in the world is to convince people to slow down just enough to visit their brain more often. I mean, for goodness sakes, you're carrying it around anyway, right? And it's astounding when you visit what it's capable of. But the faster the world goes, and by the way, we collude with it. How many of you check your cell phones before you get out of bed in the morning? Oh, I know who you are. Raise your hands. Yeah, because it's like 70% of people. Learning to pause just enough, to slow down just enough, to ponder. What if? What if it could be different? What if we could do this a new way? What if there's something I don't know? What if there's a different perspective? What if? I know I'm right because I'm really smart, but what if there was? What if? What's the number one reason smartphones have to be replaced in the workforce today, globally? Not overuse, for sure. Not outdated. Not broken. Not thrown against the wall. I'm sure that's in the top 3. What is it? Nope, not battery life. Oh, come on. Somebody knows. Drop. What is it? I heard. Dropped in the toilet. Wait a minute. I have a prize for you, ma'am. And I'm sure you don't. Who said that? You have to raise your hand because I can't see with the lights. Oh, it was you. Wait, you're going to have to come up. I can't throw it that far. This is like the Dallas Stadium. Here, okay. sir, that one's not to scale. Okay, it's not to scale. All right. The number one reason phones are replaced mostly at work today is because they are dropped in the toilet. Now, if you can't pause there, where can you pause?
It's a working zone.
No, it is not a working zone for that, okay? Maybe for other things, it's not a working zone for that. And by the way, if you think people on the other end of the line don't know that's where you are, we could definitely do a whole nother session about that. We'd put you in the little remedial group, okay? It's an amazing, amazing thing how we've got so many sort of misnomers about this brain of ours. So what do? How do we turn some of these tendencies, these illogical functionings of the brain, into something that really works well for us in this hyper-paced world? Because as much as I'd love to wave a magic wand and slow things down, sadly, my crown does not extend that far. Right? When everyone else dies and I'm in charge, I'll do that. But until then, we kind of have to adapt and work within what we have. Right? So how do we turn that into something that works for us? The hyper-pace, all of the distractions, the things that are constantly pinging at us to make us less effective than we could be. How do we turn that into something different? So first I want you to learn to challenge conventional thinking. Just because it's always been done that way, that's kind of what Kodak thought too. Or Pan Am. I can go through the list if you want. Insanely successful organizations, no longer with us. So the first thing you have to do is seek diverse data. Fill your brain with cool stuff from industries beyond your own. The more you know about what you do, the less you know about everything else is the high likelihood. So look at ancillary industries, things just before, just after you. Packaging, logistics, right? Consumer trends. There's all sorts of very cool data. Question your assumptions and biases. When you find yourself feeling very strongly about something, just pause. Set a timer for 30 seconds. It's nothing in the scheme of things. 30 seconds and just visit your own brain. Why do I feel so strongly about this? What assumptions am I making about why this is true or not true? Why this would be effective or not effective? Why do I feel this way? What am I really thinking here? And you're going to be surprised how hard it is to put your thumb on what led you to your decision. We don't think about what we're thinking most days. So really slow down just enough to consider what you're thinking. So here's what we're going to do. You've got some materials in your notebook. We're going to play my very favorite exercise. This is called the 9-dot exercise, probably for a fairly obvious reason for those of you that can count. Okay? Now, the group I worked with earlier, I'm going to totally divulge this. They know the answer to this, so if you have one of them at your table, they're going to seem really smart, but it's only because we just did it a few hours ago. Okay? They will not accept a bribe. Is that correct? Okay? No bribes. All right, so you're going to need a pen, pencil, or writing implement. Does everybody have something they can write with? If not, you can kind of do it in your head. That'd be okay, too. All right? Here's what we're going to do. Let me set you up to win on this exercise. Let me be very, very clear about the definition of winning on this exercise. Winning in this exercise is connecting all 9 dots as fast as you possibly can. Now, don't dive in just yet because I'm going to give you 3 rules, and 3 rules only that you must follow in connecting the 9 dots, okay? 3 rules you must follow. Rule number 1, you may not lift your pen, pencil, or writing implement from the paper, okay? Rule number 2, you may use no more than 3 lines. Some of you may have done this with 4. 4 is for losers. No more than 3, okay? You may use only straight lines. No curved lines. No curved lines, okay? So what is winning in this exercise? What is it? Connect all 9 dots as fast as you possibly can. Do not lift your pen, pencil, or writing implement from the paper. Got it? No more than 3, only straight lines. Go. Quick as you possibly can. Don't lift your pen or pencil from the paper. How many of you are sitting there trying to figure this out? I put the answer up almost immediately. How many of you were sitting there doing this quietly by yourself the hard way? Where did you learn that? School. Too funny. Robin, you were definitely called out. All right. Where did you learn to do things quietly by yourself the hard way? School. Now, again, for those of you in school, don't listen to this part. Because you have to follow the rules in school. But once you're a big grown-up person, you don't. And in fact, those rules are the worst possible thing that you should follow. How many of you are truly doing something in your businesses that has never been done before in the history of all mankind in any planetary system in the universe? BS.
Can you translate that, please?
No, just no, you're not. Just no. Of course you're not. Of course you're not. And yet, you try to do it by yourself quietly the hard way. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. Now, I love this exercise because once you see the answer, you go, oh my gosh, that's so simple. And by the way, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 other insanely simple solutions. Did any of the kids get other solutions? Good. What did you get? Okay, so horizontally. Okay, good. Come up and get your prize. There you go. Okay, you're welcome. It's amazing how oftentimes 6-year-olds can get multiple solutions. And I'm going to give you a bunch that they usually get because they don't have all the rules in their head yet. The problem is by the time we're at our age, and I'm sweeping you all with that blanket, we have a lot of rules. We have tens of thousands of rules in our head, and most of them limit our thinking. They're why we can't, why it won't. They're really yuck. Really yuck. So the first assumption most of you made, how many of you were trying to connect these dots by staying in the framework of the dots? Who was doing that? Yeah, bless your little hearts. So, did I mention you had to stay in the framework of the dots? Did I? Why did you? Because. That's as good an answer as any. It's a really, really interesting thing. It is the first giant rule most people put in their head. And oh, by the way, if someone gives you ready for rain? Because apparently there's a need. Okay? All right. All right. All right. The first giant rule most people put in their head is I have to stay in the framework of the dots. It's completely made up. Did I say anything about that? No. You've heard of that phrase, think outside the box, yes? This exercise is the origin of that phrase, in case you're wondering. There never was like a little man in a little box anywhere, okay? So this exercise is the origin of that. Once, those of you that maybe have done this before, usually you can remember, oh my gosh, I remember I go way outside the box, right? The problem is the second giant and very powerful rule flies into your brain. Does anybody know what the second rule is that most of you were applying? Who? I heard it over here. Who said it? Center dot. You got to go through the center of the... You were in the thing. You're supposed to shut up. No, he's not. The other guy's your brother. How many of you were trying to go through the center of the dots? Yeah, why? Why? What an odd rule to make up.
I hope you make us feel better here pretty soon.
Come here. Come here. Excuse us just a moment. Did you read my bio? Because I work with the United States Navy SEALs. So I could have you killed. You wouldn't even know you were dead. Right, for a long time, like a week or so. You wouldn't even know you were dead. Right? And I am intentional in setting you up to fail. So it's actually a great point, even though I want to pretend that it's not. It really is a great point, because it is when you fail that you are most likely to learn something new. In your success, you keep doing the same things over and over. Even if it's not really big success, even if it's just getting by, you still keep doing the same things over and over. It is only when you truly, deeply fail that you resort one of those pathways. Do you feel like you really, truly, deeply failed? No. I do, so let me give you a brain. Okay? Be quiet, take your brain. Okay? We're truly astounding. And the funny thing is you know you're in a setting where you have this lady who comes in and she's talking about the brain, and the likelihood is you're probably going to get some things that push you. And yet, I speak with audiences all over the world, and it's the same thing. Because as humans, we have many, many, many of the same characteristics. Our brains are the same. Our brains are the same. The same mistakes. The same pathways that don't really work, but by golly, they're comfortable. We're used to them. We're used to them. So thinking about what is not changed. What is not changed? What new things are there? You'd be shocked if you sit down and make a list of what is not changed, how small that list is. And yet most days you act like it's 99% of the stuff. Really get in touch with what you're thinking, right? Eradicate thinking differently killers. Now, I know none of you would ever say any of these things, but you've heard of idiots that say these things, right? No, it's not possible. It's too expensive. There's no budget. It's too difficult. That's too big of a change. Have any of you ever heard any of these? Like from family members you don't like? Yeah? It's very, very interesting, and language is important because it prompts us. It prompts us to start moving down a pathway, to either dig in deep and prove that you're wrong and I'm right, it's obvious, or to thunk a new thunk. And thunking new thunks actually takes less energy than digging in, by the way. How many of you get tired? At the end of a week, you love what you do. Clearly you're passionate about it, but how many of you are a little worn out at the end of a week? Who in here is a little worn out? I know I am, and I love what I do. Absolutely, positively love what I do. Visit your brain and play with it a little bit. It will give you energy. Your brain loves when you visit. It does consider it play. And more, the faster and faster you go, the less you're using it. The more you're in what we call rote behavior, to doing, not to thinking. Because we have built-in shortcuts. When we react or we respond immediately. Some of those shortcuts are great for us. Someone swerves in front of me because they were texting and driving, which I know none of you would do. But they were. So they swerve in front of me, and I can hit the brakes really quick or swerve out of the way. That's a good road behavior. You don't have to pause and ponder, did they not see my car? You know, right? React instantly. That's a good thing. But most days at work, you are not faced with those kinds of decision points. But you act like you are. You act like you are. So get rid of these types of phrases. And I've given them to you in your handout there so that you've got them. Use expansive language. Use expansive language. Open things up to possibilities, to alternatives and options. Could we? What if we did? Is it possible that? Think huge, as someone says. Oh, come on, that was funny. That's it then. No. Use expansive language. What if? What else is possible? What can we do? What if we had to? What if I don't have a choice on changing this? Now what will I thunk? What if I have to thunk differently about this? Choose things that you've been doing the same way a long time. Those are great opportunities. What if our competitor came up with something new? What would we do different? So that you open your brain instead of constrain it. Remember, 9 out of 10 of our thunks constrain our thinking. They stop us. Now, this is one of my other favorite techniques. I want you to expose yourself. I recognize we're in the sovereign nation of California, so I want you to expose yourself legally and appropriately. Yeah, of course it is allowed. You can go in any bathroom you want, right? Expose yourself legally and appropriately. And in your materials, I gave you some sentence starters and some language prompts to be able to do that. Explain why and how you thunk the way you thunk. Here's the data I've got. Here's what I think it means. Here's why I think we should do this. Oh my gosh, what if there's different data? What if we have the same data, but it means something different to you? What if you made assumptions that I didn't make, I made some you didn't? What if? It's stunning how when you start taking advantage of other brains, how fast that grows into possibilities. What got you to your conclusion? Really understand and think about what you're thinking about. You'll be shocked at how hard that is. You just know you feel strongly. Why? Why? And is it time to update that? What biases and assumptions influenced you? What do you believe to be so? Unquestionably. Is it? Is it because of where you grew up, where you went to school, what your parents taught you? Is it possible it could be something else as well? So examine your thinking process. As I've clearly demonstrated, the brain can get confuselated. That's a Hollyism. That's not a real word, okay? Sometimes we're irrational, and our patterns are outdated. Imagination that could be endless often gets gated. We see what we want and say, no, it can't be. We just make stuff up. Oh my God, can't you see? And we so often hear, this is the best way. Everyone would agree. It's just how it's done. Just please let it be. We've tried that before. It surely won't work. Don't waste your time. The boss is a jerk. We like to imagine the sky is the limit, but we stumble on blind spots and our biases in it. To all my real thunkers, don't you give in. It's time to thunk bigger and use our brain as a friend. Challenge the thoughts that get stuck in your head. Think big new thunks as you lay in your bed. Fill your brain with cool stuff. Give it space to ponder. Explore whole new ways. Your brain loves to wonder. Be playful. Have fun. Ask questions. Cause suspicion. Walk in the grass. Make friends with uncertainty. Feed whimsy. Break tradition. Raise all good hell. Not you guys. Thunk some new thunks, and all will be swell. As the good doctor said, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You'll steer a lot better and get where you want if you ponder all the things you can thunk. Go forth and thunk even more amazing things. Thank you for letting me play with your brains for a few minutes tonight.